Shelley is going to be talking about the power of owning your story. So I'm going to just introduce Shelley here, and then we are going to get right to it. So after years of struggling with a painful history of sexual, verbal, and physical abuse, Shelley found healing through faith. The insights gained through her restoration journey, along with her passion for helping others, is the foundation for her writing and ministry. She is a speaker, poet, and she is the author of 5 books. And she uses her own life experiences to help individuals recognize and pursue their God-given purpose and identity. So, Shelley, welcome, 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 welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. It was really fun. I joined and listened to Kimberly. Ooh, good stuff.
Yes, yeah, so much to talk about with this whole. I mean, we could probably go on forever, but maybe we'll have another summit. You guys let me know if you think you want to do this again. So, Shelley, let's go ahead. Maybe just share a little bit, just about yourself and your story a little bit, just to kind of give context as we move into the whole concept of the power of owning your story.
Absolutely. So, you shared a little bit in my intro. So, I grew up in a very violent and chaotic home. Uh, Sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. That was the norm for me growing up. And what that did was create a situation where I didn't understand who I was. I did not really recognize and understand who God created me to be. And because much of our behavior and much of the way we move through life is driven by our identity, because I didn't understand who I was, that showed up in many ways throughout my adult life, certainly through high school and then into my adult life. But there was a moment of reckoning for me. I'm faith-based, so everything I know comes from my understanding of who God is in my life. But that reckoning, that moment of understanding of who He created me to be, changed everything and has now driven this part of my life.
Yeah. So talk to us about that moment. Like, what can you just, because maybe those watching today are like, well, how do I have that moment? Right. Or what does that moment look like? Can you just kind of talk us through a little bit of that?
Yes, yeah, actually, I can. So it's interesting because my book is written. There's a verse in the book of John, or several verses. It's in chapter 5, and it's verse 1 through 13. And it's about this guy who lays at a pool where he can get healed. This pool has these miraculous abilities to heal people. He's just feet from there. And the story tells us that he's laid there for 38 years without getting into that pool. He's clearly stuck, and I truly believe that story unfolds a lot of and reveals a lot of what we go through on journeys. When we come from something traumatic or broken, we get stuck in an identity that says, this is who I am. For him, he was the guy at the pool who laid there every day for 38 years, stuck in that identity. But he has an encounter with Jesus Christ, and the moment of healing for him is when Jesus says, stand up, pick up your mat, and walk. Um, Interestingly enough, I wrote my book on that story because that was really how my journey went. There was a moment when I had to own my story. I had to stand up and own it. And then I had to pick up my mat, right? I had to pick up that thing I'd been laying on, that identity, and I had to walk with it. It's interesting because Kimberly shared a bit about how those traumatic events can move us into greater things, into other things, and that really relates well for my story because that is what happened. Once I identified and owned my story and owned the experience that I had, I was able to move past it and become unstuck. And when Jesus tells the man, pick up your mat and walk, he says that because we have a tendency to stand up, look at it, and lay back down on it, right? That's our tendency, is to lay back down on it. And Jesus said, no, 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 you need to pick it up and walk with it. You can't lay back down on it. And so that was really, in essence, what happened in my own journey.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And would you say that that experience, that moment, like that is something that it can't be manufactured, right? It can't be forced, right? Each of us, would you say, Shelley, each of us can have that moment at different times in our lives?
Yes. Yes, not only can you have that moment, but you can have several of those moments. Because you will continue to find things out about yourself and learn things about yourself as you change and grow and move into other seasons, right? But
Mhm.
definitely, I think there is opportunity to have that moment, and it really takes that self-reflection, that ability to have that hard look at yourself and say, where am I today? What is going on in my life today? Because the truth of it is, you cannot own the past. You can't do anything about it. Wherever you've been in the past, whatever experiences you've had,
Mhm.
um, you can't change those. And we don't own the future. We can't change or predict what's going to happen in the future. So truly what we own is today. And
Mhm.
having that ability, that I always think it's a very brave thing to stand up and look in the mirror and say, where am I today? What is going on in my life? It takes a little bit of courage to do that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And is there anything, knowing that that is a experience each of us have differently and we can't force it, right? What would you say to someone who's like, I really want to get to that point, Shelley? Like, I want to be able to own my story. Um, is there anything besides the self-reflection that you think can help move them in that direction, right? Like getting them on that path of at least saying, yes, I want to get there. What are some, does that make sense what I'm saying?
I think so. I think so. And I'll tell you, the starting point for myself and almost every single person I've talked to is getting to a place that you finally are done with it. You don't want to keep staying in that
Mm.
stuck place that you're currently in. Because until you get to that place where you're done laying on that mat, you
Yeah.
aren't going to want anything to be different, right? It's too easy to go back and lay down. You might sit up for a little while, you might even stand up, but you're going to lay back down on it because it's comfortable to, it's what we know, it's what we've lived. And in some ways, even though it's difficult, even though it's unhealthy, it's much more comfortable to lay in that place than to step into the unknown, even if the unknown is a healthier and better place. So it starts with that place of being done with laying on that mat and staying in that stuck place. And I think that is an individual journey for each person. You have to decide how much longer do you want to lay on that. But certainly, if you're seeing yourself in a place where you can't move forward, where it's impacting relationships, where it's impacting yourself and how you navigate through life, that might be an indication that it's time to take that step, that it's time to step into that reflection and that willingness to say something has to change here.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. No, that's very helpful, and I hopefully that resonates with some of you guys today too, because I know many of those conversations. I think the topic revolved around feeling stuck, like stuck. What's my and that's what some of them ask, like, how do I discern my next step? How do we keep doing treatment? Do we not? Do we? I mean, so much of that journey is about what's that next step, and how do we kind of, like you said, maybe step into the fact that maybe we're tired of being stuck, or we're done being stuck, and then
And I think part of that is knowing who you are. And I truly believe that we are such a busy society. We have been such a busy and not self-focused society culture that we've kind of lost track of who we are. I think last year was a great leveler for many people. I think a lot of people had not come face to face with themselves. They've been too busy to maybe face what's going on inside. It's easy to busy myself out of recognizing what's going on inside, right? But part of that self reflection, that getting to the end of yourself, is also knowing who you are, right? What are your strengths? What are your hopes? What are your dreams? What is it that you really want? And who are you? Who truly are you inside?
mhm. Yeah, definitely. I think I love what you said about it's so easy to be busy, and I think that that can happen a lot when um, we're going from like treatment to treatment or appointment to appointment. We and I'll speak for myself because I think we so often it was just, well, when's my next appointment? When's my next whatever? That I didn't really have that time to stop and do that self reflection because it was painful. Like I didn't want to do that, Shelley, and so I think hopefully that encourages people today that it may be, it just because it's painful doesn't mean we shouldn't still look to do that. because of the freedom that can even bring for our lives.
And so many times in a journey, you know, infertility, for example, it's so easy to take on the identity of that experience, right?
Yeah.
It is an experience, it is not who you are. Um, so the little part of my journey that I hadn't shared was that I had a period of infertility. Um, I had gone through about 5 years of infertility, had a successful pregnancy, and then at 12 weeks lost that baby, and then had another 4 years before my son was born. So definitely had experienced that. And there was a time through that journey that I started to look at myself in the context of the experience instead of who I was. That became my identity. So just like the man at the mat who laid on that mat, I started to think I was the experience.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, that's a really good distinction, that experience is not our identity. That I've never really thought about it like that before. So, and I know we had someone who actually just kind of asked that question too about that, accepting that title with it, but maybe really it's like you said, it's an experience. It's not your identity of who you are. Yeah. So that's a very, I hadn't thought about that before. So so what we do have a couple questions from people here that I'd love to kind of visit with you about, and just kind of talking about that owning our story. And so for many of us here today, and even beyond this, right, Shelley, because what we're talking about today applies to obviously this journey people are on, but it's able to be applied for the next season, right? Because we're all going to have another season. But for many of us here, the story we're currently living is not one we wanted to write, right? It's not a story we wanted. So what can we do with that? How can we still own a story we don't like?
Oh, that's such a good question. And I can tell you personally, um, I would not have wanted to walk the journey that I lived. Nobody says, I'm really glad that I was sexually molested at 5 or physically or emotionally abused. Nobody's going to want that journey, but it was one that was dealt, right? That was the hand that was dealt. And I think there's such power, again, going back to what Kimberly said, there's power in that story becoming the power that you have rather than the limitation that you have. My story has become powerful because now I'm able to speak that story into other people's lives. That story has become the power that allows me to speak to women. I speak to students, to youth who are going through that currently, and I can tell them there's hope on the other side of it, through and in it. So my life verse is Isaiah 61:3. He will bring you beauty for ashes. And that's actually the title of my book is Beautiful Ashes. And it's that for a reason, because ashes are burned things. They are not pretty. We don't take the ashes out of our fireplace and show our friends, look at these beautiful ashes I made. But through the hands, right, through the hands of our Heavenly Father, through our faith, they can become something beautiful. And the beauty is that our stories can be used to help other people. I truly believe that's the power in it. Kimberly or Melissa, your story, what you're doing now, so powerful, right? Your journey no longer defines you. It's now become a reason that you're helping other people. And every single person on this journey today, on this call, you have a story that is being woven that can be someone else's solution or someone else's comfort. And there is something so powerful for us when we allow our stories to be used to help other people, right? Because now I am no longer the victim. I am no longer powerless. There's something called reframing. And that is when we take our story and we reframe it, we change it so that it's now the power in it rather than the tragedy in it, the brokenness in it. So it reframes it and it becomes something beautiful and amazing.
Wow, that's so powerful. That Enough said, Shelley. There's nothing more to follow up with that. But what you did say kind of made me think of one thing, is that I'm looking at my note here where I'm trying to find it, was that maybe not everyone is comfortable sharing their story, or there's still things that they're working underneath the surface on. So what would you kind of say or encourage to someone who's kind of afraid to tell this part of their story? So yeah, what would you share? So no, yeah, afraid to tell others this part of your story. So what would you kind of share with them about that?
Okay. And I want to give you a little background. So I never in a million years thought that I would stand on a stage in front of women or students and share the painful past that I walked. That was not anything that was in my mind, but I was asked to do it. And the very first time was probably, maybe 15 years ago. And I so remember that experience because I shared the story. Many of my friends were there to support me, of course. And I remember getting off the stage and just sobbing. And my friends saying to me, well, no, you did a good job. And I thought, I'm not crying because I'm scared that I flopped. I'm crying because it's such a relief. So I know the power of telling stories. And I will tell you, so the other thing about me that we didn't talk about, I'm a freelance writer. And one of the things I do is I ghostwrite for people. So I have written probably 30 books for people. My name's not on the book. You would never go and find me there, but I help them tell their story. And why that I'm telling you that is because I also listen to stories. I have heard people's stories over and over, and there's power in that. There's power in that. So what happens if you don't want to stand on the stage? Totally understand that. That is not maybe where you need to be, but there is power in telling the story because the story can take on a life of its own. And there's something powerful about speaking it out. It breaks that. It makes it less powerful. It makes it, there's something amazing that happens when we tell the story. Now, I want to tell you, that doesn't mean you have to go stand up in front of your church or your business and tell everybody you know that you're walking this infertility journey. But I encourage you to find one person. Find that person that you trust, and maybe not your significant other, because they're walking the journey too. So they might not be the right thing. Yes, there is a process of walking that through with them, but you need someone that's outside of that to hear your story. There's power in that. There's freedom in it, because when you tell the story, it no longer has a stranglehold on you. Mm-hmm. It no longer has the power to pull you back down, to make you lay on that mat again. I don't know if that's what you were looking for, Melissa.
Yeah, no, that's great. And one thing I think that's encouraging to share is because you're right. Well, let me say it this. Would you say too that owning of your story, some of that depends upon you and your skills and your gifts? Would you say that is something also to take into consideration?
I would say that,
and maybe let me say this, because like you said, starting a blog or speaking on a stage isn't for everyone, right? So if you're someone who's like, oh, I'm not comfortable with that, so they're maybe thinking, well, I can't own my story. But there's ways to still own it, even if it isn't like a public platform or a book or a blog.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. And that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying go start a blog, although some of you here need to do that. Mm-hmm. But if you can't do that, if that's not your personality, there is still power in finding that one other person, right? I talk a lot in my books about the circle. You've got to have a circle of people around you. You've got to have community. There is power in community. And the problem with walking something like this, walking a journey like this, is that you tend to isolate because you think no one else knows. This right here is a perfect example of the fact that there are people all around you walking this journey that you're walking, and you don't even realize that the other person is going through it. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not saying that you necessarily have to stand on a stage or start a blog or do that, but find that one other person, whether they're walking the journey or not, finding that person that can hear your story, because the truth of it is we all want to be recognized. We all want to be heard. Mm-hmm. So having someone hear your story, there's power in that for you. One other person. You have to tell at least one other person.
Mhm. Yeah, I like how you said it's not just the telling, it's also the hearing
Correct.
of your story, that is this beautiful power that's created with that. I like what you said about that too. So we did get a question here, Shelley. So let's see, it's a little bit, let me see here. I'm going to see if I can kind of read through it.
And I apologize, I'm looking over here because my screen's bigger and I can't read.
Oh yeah, and I'm kind of looking down too at this question. So if you guys, Shelley's going to go ahead and read that. But yes, you guys, if you have any other questions, type them in the chat, or send them to Kelsey privately, and then she can keep you anonymous what you're asking. But please feel free to share those here so we can visit with those more about Shelley. Visit with Shelley about them.
I love this. There are so many things that are spoken over us, negative and positive things. Words are so powerful, you guys. They're so powerful. And for the person that typed this question, that was spoken over you. You're going to be an amazing mother. And so the expectation is that if you're not pregnant, if you don't have a child yet, that somehow you've missed the boat or you've missed the mark on this. And the true fact is, becoming a mother is out of your control. You can't do anything to make that happen or not happen at this point, right? But the word mother, I think we specialize that into having children of our own. But you said you're an educator, so you are mothering. You already are mothering people, whether you realize it or not, you're already doing that. And so I would encourage you to, one, because I feel like there's a little bit of disappointment in yourself in that you've heard the words you're going to be a great mother, and yet you feel disappointed because now you feel like you're not living that out. And we don't know what the future holds for you. There's still time. That could still happen. But even if it doesn't, and even in this time of waiting, you are mothering. You are mothering. You're mothering the people that you're in your sphere of influence, whether it's, I don't know if you're an educator in with young, high school, college age, what age group you're with, but you're mothering them. You're mothering your friends, right? We mother each other. So I would encourage you to really let go of the stigma that because you haven't biologically had a child, you're not mothering, or you're not successful, or that somehow you failed in this, right? Those words are powerful. And it sounds like people have a lot of the people around you that have spoken that, they see something in you. They see that caring spirit, and it came out in your message, right? Because you said that's part of your personality is to take care of people. So you're already doing that. It's the word mother, I think, that stings because you're on this journey and you haven't experienced that yet. But I encourage you, you're already doing it. So let go of that disappointment in yourself. And I hope that helps you. I don't know who posted that, but.
Yeah, and it sounds like a lot of other people are feeling something similar to that. So thank you to who did ask that question, because we've got other educators on here as well. So I think that was a great question to ask. So thank you for vulnerably doing that. I know this is obviously everything we're talking about today is very sensitive, but we do appreciate everyone who's willing to kind of open up about that. So I think I do want to ask another question about, this one's maybe a little bit different. Some people also experience secondary infertility, and you did too, Shelley. I mean, that was something you had shared. And so I think that the question that we have here is this difficult, I'm going to call it, I don't like the word balance, but kind of working through the fact that this person was kind of sharing, you have a child, but you still have a desire that's unfulfilled. And then I think there's some guilt that's associated with you thank God he blessed you with this, but you still have this desire for another child. So what would you kind of help share that with them? Because I do think there's some guilt and still desiring something, right? Even though you were blessed with one, but now you're dealing with secondary infertility.
Yeah.
what kind of insights or, encouragement would you kind of share with them?
Yeah, and that's it, there's so many aspects of infertility that are unique to the individual, right? And the first thing I want to tell you is not to compare. Um, because the journey is so unique to each individual, but it's so easy as humans to look and say, well, they have one child, right? Or I have one child, so I should be satisfied with this. I shouldn't feel bad about wanting another one, or I shouldn't feel the shame or the guilt, whatever is associated with that, right? We are, as humans, and especially, I think the majority of people on here are women. As women, we tend to do that, right? We compare. So my first advice is don't compare. Don't compare. I always tell when I work primarily with high school and middle school students, and I'm always telling them, eyes on your own paper, right? We all have our own journey. So that's probably my biggest advice. And then I think the journey is the journey. The journey is the journey. What you're going through, what you're experiencing, it's so easy to allow ourselves to feel guilt in something that we don't have control over. You don't have control over this. The story that keeps popping in my head, Melissa, is so I live in a house right behind me. There's this beautiful farm. And every year I love that the farmer goes out and he plants these seeds. And then we wait. We just wait. We don't know. They might come up, they might not come up. We don't know. The farmer waits, hopeful that he's going to have a harvest. What he doesn't do is go dig up those seeds if he can't see them growing. See, because a lot of the growth happens where we can't see it. He doesn't go dig them up and say, well, is anything going on down there? But we do that. We do that. And I don't know if this is specifically getting to your question, Melissa, but I just keep thinking we do that so much, don't we? Like we have this situation, whether it's primary or secondary infertility, and we start to dig below the surface and try to dig up the hope that we've planted. Because the hope is the hope, whether it's your first time through it, whether you've had a child and now it's secondary infertility, whatever the situation is. Mm-hmm. The primary thing is we lose hope. We lose hope. We start to wonder. We start to give up hope. That's where disappointment sinks in. That's where frustration sinks in, right? Because hope is the assurance of what we can't see. That's what the Bible says, the assurance of what we can't see. The farmer has assurance. He can't see what's going on. He can't see it. But don't dig those seeds up. Don't go and pull them back and say, well, it happened once, now it's not happening. It must be me. Don't do that. Don't do that. Try to stay out of the soil and try to keep that hope alive. I don't know if that helped, if that's what you were looking for also, but that's just what kept resonating with me.
Yeah, I like that though. Like, don't dig up your seeds. My family, we have, my dad's a farmer. So I love that analogy of don't dig up your seeds. That's really a powerful visual reminder of that. So we did get a question in here too, Shelley. Someone was shared here that they told a close friend their story. So this kind of goes back to finding one person, like you had shared. And they responded in a very insensitive way, feeling like I'm overreacting. They think it's no big deal. Which I'm sorry. First of all, Lucy, you shared this. I'm really sorry because you reached out to this person in vulnerability. And I'm sorry that was kind of the response you had, because that is hard. And then we put up walls, right? Once we try to reach out for that help and then we are met in a non-supportive way, it's like, oh, there's my wall, right? So anyway, this is kind of her question here, Shelley. Is just that had happened. So what would you kind of talk to her about that?
To Lucy or anyone that's had that experience. My good gosh, we are, as humans, we just sometimes have the word. We say the wrong thing. And we do it in a lot of situations. I agree with Melissa. I'm so sorry, Lucy, that you had that experience. There is something to be said about sharing your story with others that have had the experience or that you can trust with those kind of sensitive things, I will encourage you to give her this person that had this response, to give them a little bit of grace. What it makes me think of is, so I have a year and a half ago, I lost my very, very close sister. And it was such a hard journey. And inevitably, so many people came up to me and said things that were insensitive, or, you know, that as a Christian, I should be okay because, hey, you're going to see her again. And I thought, yeah, but I miss her now. Like, that's not helping me.
Yeah, exactly.
And I say that to say to you, I have to remember, though, that those people, as insensitive as the remarks were, they're coming to you, they don't know what to do. If they've not experienced the journey, they don't know what to do. They don't know how to deal with the feelings. And so we tend to, as humans, want to say something to fix it. Anytime I walk into a situation where there's been trauma or difficulty, I have to remember, I can't fix that. I have no words. Truthfully, none of us on this call have words that can make this not hurt for you. That's the painful part of it for any of us. I wish, be honest, I wish that I could come here and just hand you guys some beautiful word that you would all walk away and the pain is gone and the journey is fixed. But that's the truth is, I don't have that. No human being has that. And this friend of yours, as insensitive as it was, that was their human attempt to do something, right? To do something. Mm-hmm. It's why when people pass away, you get 1,000 casseroles, because everybody feels like they want to do something, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm sorry, Lucy, that happened to you. I really encourage you, don't let that make you close yourself off, because there are many women on this call today who could walk this and hear you out and listen to your story. Melissa's offered up her email address. I encourage you to connect with her, with other women on here, and continue to share your story. Please don't let that make you become isolated, because isolation it's the worst thing that you can do to yourself. It will hurt you more than harm you.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. And I love what you said though, Shelley, that none of us here, not even us, not even me, Lucy, or anybody else, like I'm not even though I've experienced it and Shelley's experienced it, none of the words we say can take away the pain. And I think that's really powerful, because I think sometimes I talked to people hoping that they would, like hoping that they would take it away. And you're right, they can't really. It's just validate my feelings, just listen to me, and just listen to me, what I'm experiencing, and sit with me in what I'm going through.
Yeah, absolutely. There is power in having your story heard, power in that. But unfortunately, we're human. And I always say, you can spend 10 minutes with me and you're going to figure out that I don't have all the answers. I don't. But there are amazing people on here who can listen to you and who are willing to listen to you, and your story deserves to be heard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it deserves to be heard. Yeah, I love that. And would you say too that there's the people that we have around us, some are maybe, because of their experiences, they are the type of person that is willing to sit with us, right? Where we do have some friends or even family that maybe that's just not them. It's not in their wheelhouse to sit with us in that, but maybe we do have people. So would you say too that there is maybe some discernment in who we share our story with? Does that question kind of make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so good, because I talk about the importance of community. I talk about that in my books. I talk about that when I speak to women. But you have to be discerning. You're absolutely right. You want people that will love you where you are, but also lovingly not let you stay there. Yeah. You want women that will hear your story and encourage you, but also not let you wallow and lay down on a mat. And that is that is a skill set that not everybody has. So you have to get to know people. You can't walk into a room and pick that person out necessarily. I always talk about levels of friendship, right? We have that level one friend, those are your Facebook friends or your Instagram friends. They
Mhm.
like all your pictures.
Yep.
And you can tell them what you planted in your garden or what you cooked for supper last night.
Yeah.
And then maybe you go down a little bit and there's those level three friends that you can tell a little bit more to. You can tell them you're frustrated with your job. You can tell them you feel like you're having a bad hair day, whatever that is. But there are those level five friends that you can tell your heart and soul to. You can share the darkest places and the highest places, and they're there with you in that. You got to find those level five people. You got to find those level five people. Now, you might tell your story to the level threes, but don't expect that the level threes are the ones that are going to walk the journey with you. The level fives are the ones that are going to walk this with you. And it's like that for any journey that we go through. You
Mhm.
got to have those level five people.
Yeah. Do you think too sometimes, and I'm just even reflecting on people that I know, that maybe we think we have a level five or we want a level five, but they actually are like a level two. Do
Yeah,
you think that happens?
100%. And this kind of thing will reveal the levels more than anything. The experience I had losing my sister, because it was so traumatic and such, it came out of nowhere. I was shocked at some of the people that I thought were level, even fours and fives, that just sort of like left the scene, had nothing. They
Yeah.
were like, I'm out. This is more than I can deal with. But then there were people that I thought were maybe level twos and threes that showed up in a way that blew me away. And so
Mhm.
you really have to, again, I work with students all the time. And so I'm always talking about these concepts of discerning. And
Mhm.
one of the things I tell them is you got to judge the fruit. What is going on? You can't look at someone who's only posting pictures of their beach vacation and
Mhm.
think that that person has 5 seconds to hear you, right? You've got to get to know someone. You can't just judge by what you're seeing on social media or in a casual conversation, at a networking event. You've got to
Mhm.
spend time with that person. You got to build a relationship with that person. And as you do that, you're going to see the fruit in their life and you're going to start to know, can I trust that person with those little five conversations?
Yeah, yeah. And would you say too that even if we've known someone for many, many years, because I've heard from plenty other women too, where they try to talk to their mom about this, or even maybe an aunt or close relative. And even though we've known them for a long time, they're maybe still not a level five. Would you say that that can happen too?
For sure. And I also think a part of that, Melissa, is that, and I talk about this a little bit too in my book. So I walk mostly with individuals that have had traumatic life events, like similar to what I grew up with. And the truth of it is, your family is not always a good place for that circle conversation, those level five conversations. And here's why: because your family is always going to be biased to some degree. Your mom, she may have the ability to understand the process, to feel, to empathize, to walk it through, but you're her baby. And
Mhm.
she is going to try and fix this for you. And she is going to try and make it right. Your family, your cousins, your sisters, right, your brothers, whoever's walking that out, they love you. They don't want to see you go through it. And they're going to be trying to fix. They're going to be trying to make it okay for you. Or they're going to be trying to, it's going to freak them out and they're going to want to step away, right? Because you'll see both sides of it. Like, oh, let me fix, let me help, let me say the right thing, let me hear, let me fix this for you. Or no, I can't go this deep conversation because my family is at this level of it's sort of the levels of intimacy that
Yeah,
Kimberly was talking about, right? Yeah,
yeah.
you got to judge that, but your family is not always a good place for that because they have an emotional connection to you
Mhm. Yeah,
that
yeah.
can bias the conversation. I'm not saying don't go to your family, but I'm saying you just have to be aware.
Yeah, yeah. That I love how you talked about just those different levels of friendships and maybe for that's something to kind of discern, like we said, and because we're gonna get into an awesome activity to end our time here, Shelley. But maybe that's something just for people to discern that when we go to a level 2, but we're expecting a level 5, we're going to be disappointed.
Yes.
We're not, our expectation won't be met. And so maybe that's just a reminder then that it's not about you, right? Like it's not about you that you are unworthy of being heard, or that what you're going through isn't painful or not valid. It's just that that person you went to just wasn't at that level.
Absolutely. That is so powerful, because so many times in a difficult conversation like that, or when we don't receive what we're looking for in those conversations, it's so easy to take that on as something's wrong with me. It's not you. It is not you. There's something disconnected in the conversation or with the relationship, but you can't take that on as your own failing.
Yep.
It's not you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. So this is awesome. Like this is just awesome. And just thank you for your time, but let's go ahead. Let's go into kind of this activity you were going to have us do. And I can get some music here playing. Well, I'll let you get started first, Shelley. And then when we kind of get into it, I can play some music as we kind of process it out.
Okay. So, one of the activities that I do when I speak at events is I talk a lot about the words that define who I am. And there's a whole process that I go through to show that and talk about that. But it's so important to understand who you are. And so we are going to spend some time just meditating on those words. I talk about the voice in your head, right? We are so quick to say negative things to ourselves, to put ourselves down, to repeat things to ourselves that are not good. If we talk to our friends the way we talk to ourselves sometimes, we would not have very many friends. So we're going to try and break that pattern, and we're going to talk to ourselves about the good things about who we are. So this is not an opportunity to write down the things that disappoint you about yourself or the places you think you're failing. This is a moment to step inside, quiet yourself. Again, I'm a Christian, so for me, it's what is God saying to me about who I am, right? Quiet your mind. Who are you? Who are you? What are those words? For me, there are words on my list that I'm a writer, I'm silly, I like to joke around, I'm creative, I'm musical, right? So think of words like that on your list. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to take a few minutes and go ahead and do that process.
All right, let's get that pulled up here, Shelley. All right, if I can grab my, all right. So go ahead and get started, guys. We'll let you know here in a couple minutes as we kind of work through that.
Steady your grace that keeps forgiving. Steady your faith that keeps believing. Lead me on. Though the sky is dark and the wind blows wild, you'll never
All right. Hopefully you guys got some good stuff written down here. I know I got my list.
So, yeah, I want you to think about what that felt like. What did that activity feel like? And what if you repeated this activity when you're in that moment, when you're having those days that you feel like you're less than, like you're broken, like there's something wrong with you as a person? When you feel shame, when you feel anxiety, when you feel frustration, what if you went back to this list and started to remember who you are, who you were created to be? Because that, who God created you to be, has nothing to do with the experience you're going through. Again, it's an experience, it's not who you are. And as I said, we are so easily able to tell ourselves all the negative things about ourselves, but words are powerful, powerful. The Bible says that words can bring life or death. So we need to bring life to ourselves. And so what I encourage you to do is take this list that you've started, and hopefully you all did this activity and got a few words on there. I want you to reflect on those words, but I want you to keep that paper handy, and I want you to continue to write words down. I want you to continue to write the words down about yourself that speak life to yourself, and put it somewhere where you see it. Put it on your mirror, put it by your vanity when you're getting dressed in the morning, your dresser, whatever that place is. And I want you to remember who you are and who God created you to be.
That's awesome, Shelley. That's so good. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. Shelley, just thank you so much for just everything you shared with us today. I think, let me see here. What do we have? I know I needed to give away your book, Shelley, and I don't think I did that in amongst my things here. But what we'll do here, I know we had a couple people ask some questions here. Let me look here. And I don't know if I have their name. Let me look here because I wanted to, let's see, I think the first one, I'll have to look through this, Shelley, here as we get done, but we will give, we're going to hand out Shelley's book, Beautiful Ashes, is what she has her book. No, I can't find my sheet here, Shelley. What's the name of your book again?
It's called Beautiful Ashes. I can even hold it up for that.
Oh, there we go.
There it is. Yeah, it's called Beautiful Ashes, Finding Freedom Through Faith.
Perfect. We'll have the chat, you guys. So we'll go ahead and pick someone out here because I know we're getting close to our end time. So I want to be sensitive to that as well. But we will pick someone out here who had asked one of the questions to our speakers, and we will get that book sent to you guys. I just appreciate all of your knowledge and just your wisdom, Shelley, that you shared with us today, and just your heart behind really helping people, right? Like you really just want to help people just find their identity, and I just love what you said about like that experience that doesn't define us. That's not our identity. It's what we're experiencing. It still is going to be painful, but that's not who we are. So Shelley, if people are wanting to find more information or connect with you more, how can they find you?
Well, I'm all over social media. So if you're out there on social media, and I go by my name, Shelley Furtado Linton. I also have, if you forget that, my website is shelleyfurtadolinton.com, and you can find me there. That's probably the best way to connect with me, through one of those venues.